Hey friend, do you want to offer meaningful learning solutions that create behavior change, fit in the flow of work, and yield real results for your nonprofit? If yes, this is the podcast for you. Join me as I explore instructional design and leadership development best practices, as well as change management, belonging, and influence. If we haven't met yet, I'm Heather, and I've been in your shoes. I'm a learning and development consultant and founder of Skill Masters Market. Before starting my business, I led learning and leadership development initiatives for a large national nonprofit. I know what it's like to need to develop your staff quickly and effectively and to build the relationships and cut through the organizational layers to be successful. And I'm bringing all of that to you in this podcast. So block your calendar, turn off your Teams or Slack chat, and let's dive in. It's learning for good. Creating behavior change is no easy task. So when Rebecca Kelley of Waterford approached me about a change she wanted to facilitate in one of her teams, I knew we had a lot of work to do. I often interview people on the podcast who talk about their processes or observations or lessons learned, but today is special. Today we get to talk to one of my clients and hear how we work together to achieve their goals. Today's episode is a case study of sorts. We'll take a closer look at how my team at Skill Masters Market partnered with Rebecca's team at Waterford to address their unique needs. And I can't wait. Let's dive in. It's learning for good. An attorney and community builder, Rebecca Kelley is a skilled executive who has devoted her career to philanthropic advocacy supporting education, health, and equity advancing programs for children and youth from cradle to career. As Waterford's Executive Vice President of Advocacy, she is responsible for advancing Waterford's mission and growth within philanthropic, government, and public spheres. Prior to joining Waterford, Rebecca scaled evidence-based programs through America's land-grant universities via 4-H, YMCA of the USA, and Strive Together's collective impact initiatives. Rebecca holds a Juris Doctorate from the University of Cincinnati College of Law and is a member of the Ohio Bar. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Heather. It's great to be with you today.
I am so excited for this episode. I know we're going to talk a little bit about our project together, but I also want to learn more about you, more about Waterford, and really why this work is so important. You've dedicated your career to this type of work. And so before we really get into the project that we worked on together, I'd love to explore some of that with you. So to kick us off, tell us a little bit about your career journey.
So I think being a first-generation college graduate from Baltimore really has influenced the direction of my career. I'm a graduate of Goucher College, which focuses on global service learning leaders and really making a difference for children and communities. And a lot of the experiences that I had in college really helped to put me on the direction that my career has taken from, again, cradle to career, and working with children and families has been a constant drumbeat throughout my time after law school at the Urban League, 4-H, YMCAs, and now Waterford.org, really with our early learners. So I've had the opportunity to dive a little bit deep into all of those things, but it's all really driven as education as an equalizer and a change agent.
You care so deeply about this work. You've committed your life's work to this, really, right? This has been your entire career journey. So tell us a little bit about how Waterford specifically helps with this. What does their work look like? What do they do? And what's their mission?
Absolutely. It is such an exciting mission and opportunity that Waterford is engaged in. I think of it as our efforts around offering children wherever they learn the opportunity to engage in math, reading, and science. And early learning, early reading, and literacy is absolutely essential. We think of the Campaign for Grade Level Reading, fantastic partners of ours. And one of the sayings in the campaign is around you learn to read, and then at third grade, you read to learn. And so for us at Waterford.org is to really be able to be instrumental in helping kids be ready to learn on day one in kindergarten, having all of those fundamental skills, whether it's computational thinking that's essential for math and science, or the building blocks of through the science of reading approach that our work has taken for 48 years now.
This resonates with me a lot as a parent. I have 3 children, and More specifically, my oldest was a kindergartner when everything shut down in 2020. And so she was no longer going to a school building for education. And I can remember being a little bit overwhelmed, as we all were, thinking, okay, what is essential here? What does she actually have to do in kindergarten? Okay, learn to read. We have to do reading. If something else falls away, slips away a little bit, we'll catch up on it. But reading is essential. And so we're going to keep that up. So I can definitely relate to what you're saying. And I'm so grateful for organizations like Waterford that are doing this work, and for you who've dedicated your career to it. So we talk a little bit about how Waterford is evidence-based. Career has been very focused on equity. Why is it important to scale evidence-based, equity-focused programs like this?
So I think positive learning outcomes for all kids is really at the heart of what it is that Waterford.org is trying to do. So providing evidence-based pre-K through second grade reading, math, and science programs that children can learn, where children can use wherever they are learning. So that might mean at a YMCA, at a library, at home, in an early child care, kith and kin home setting, wherever they're learning, because this computer adaptive base of support is rooted in the science of reading as well as tier 1 level evidence. It's random control trials in education that provide that evidence base are rare. And so for Waterford to have received an I3 and then 2 EIR grants, the Education Innovation Research grants from the U.S. Department of Education, and be pursuing that most rigorous standard of excellence related to evidence is just something that I'm super excited about. And to have that ESSA Tier 1 research studies, as well as over 70 other studies. My paycheck technically comes from Waterford Research Institute. And it's when I start talking about those studies and the evidence that I'm like, oh yeah, here's why. There's such a rich base of research and a commitment, but all of that is in service of those positive learning outcomes for kids. Super proud that Waterford's programs help prepare. When you use with fidelity to the evidence-based standards, over 90% of kids enter kindergarten. Whereas if you look with that equity lens on those who are coming from zip codes where, sometimes for my own zip code, that could have determined my destiny. But for the intervention and others who were committed to making sure that I had access to educational opportunities like this one, there's a big difference between kids who came from the same kind of zip code that I did, 21227, you can look it up, and the kids who have this particular program and what it has been able to do for them in terms of making sure that they're ready to learn on day one and have those fundamental skills that are going to help them to be successful in school and life.
Yeah, such important work. And I know you mentioned in an earlier question about a partner that you all have. Partnerships are often one way that organizations can start to scale some of their work. And when we worked together, we worked on a collective impact training to help your team shift their mindset and approach to working with partners, how they work with partners. So how can taking a collective impact approach support this process of scaling and accomplishing Waterford's mission?
The beautiful thing about a collective impact approach is its basis in evidence, its commitment to advancing equity, as well as a very rigorous development of a fact base. And so it is youth-centered, community-centered, but the role of data to help drive results and impact, as in the name, is absolutely an essential part of the collective impact work that I've been a part of since 2006. And so for me, coming from 4-H and the land-grant universities with all of their deep richness in terms of let's make the best better and continuously improve, as well as the YMCA's commitment to different kind of impacts and outcomes for the young learners that they're serving. When I came to Waterford.org and had the opportunity to really work on how can we scale nationally as an audacious grantee powered by TED, the TED Talk people, as well as a Blue Meridian partner, this was absolutely essential, looking at the conditions that will help create the kind of collective impact that is needed for children to succeed. I also love the collective impact approaches look at population level outcomes because it raises your sights from the 70 studies that I talked about. Okay, here are the kids who are in the program, but there's something about collective impact that looks more broadly at the entire population, because when articles are written around how places are doing. They're looking at the region as a whole. I think of Partners for Rural Impact, a Strive Together affiliate from Cradle to Career in Appalachia, and Dreama Gentry and the work of her amazing team to really hone in on where are the key points along the pathway from cradle to career that are going to have the most impact. And there's something about that comprehensive ownership that elevates the conversation while still remaining very focused on the learning impact as well as the sense of urgency. Dream is not going to take 5 years to get there. Like, the sense of urgency is now. And so this was absolutely one of the very first projects is, okay, I have a team of people, 30 to 40 staff members who are not really familiar with collective impact. How do we all get on the same page? And that's where Skill Masters came in, understood the assignment completely, and worked with our team to develop something that was incredibly important for us and will continue to be important for us as we continue to grow and scale.
Do you wish you could connect with other nonprofit learning and development leaders? I know what it feels like to want someone to bounce ideas off of and to learn from, someone who really understands you and your work. Imagine if you could have a simple way to meet people in the field, ask questions, and share information. That's why I created the Nonprofit Learning and Development Collective, where nonprofit L&D, talent management, and DEI leaders can connect with each other quickly and easily in a virtual space. When you join this community, you will walk away with a new, diverse, and powerful network and a sounding board for your staff development needs. So if you're ready to exchange ideas and collaborate with your peers, come join the Nonprofit L&D Collective.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about how your team was working with partners, but this was a shift in how that partnership would work and really just the approach that they would use. And when we talk about a shift like that, it often involves a change, and change is complex. And so we really did have to build a more robust learning program to help start that path. So let's talk a little bit more about what we created for your team. We ended up with I think a 7-month blended learning program where the team came together for live virtual sessions. They completed 2 e-learning modules. They received weekly emails with job aids and other supporting resources and different prompts to help them in their learning. And they were paired with a thought partner on the team to reflect and plan as they were preparing for this change. And the whole process, we incorporated organizational change management and individual behavior change techniques into the experience to really focus in on what is that mindset shift, what is that approach, that change in behavior that we want to see. So that's high level, quick snapshot of what we created. How have you seen your team evolve throughout this program?
So before I talk about how I've seen the team evolve throughout this program, as you were sharing all of those different elements, I'm like, yes, check. And I think back to the scope of work that we began with, right? So it was like, I knew that Skill Masters was incredibly skilled with the e-learning side of things and job aids and making that connection into the behavior changes that we need to see. So we started with, here are the competencies that my team needs, but we also needed this additional support to support and guide them along the way. Some of the elements of what you shared were part of the evolution of this project that we did not originally conceive of, was not in the original scope of work, and we had to have different checkpoint conversations, as I greatly appreciated throughout the process. I'm like, oh, you know what? If you really want eyes on the prize, behavioral change at the end of this, let's add in that in-person touch, because originally it was all going to be emails and for the job aids and communicating through the tech side of things, which as an ed tech, we're down with that. We can make that happen with the e-learnings. But one of the things that I think was in reflection, one of the best things that came out of this were those connections across the team. So you mentioned the pairing and sharing component that took on a life of its own, actually. And so originally, again, we were thinking, oh, well, it'll be emails, these job aids, this e-learning calendar, and these e-learning modules. But then it was like, you know what? Because this is all new to many of the folks. And then there were some folks who joined the team who came in with a higher level of understanding of collective impact and prior experience around collective impact. And so then there was this imbalance, right? So you started with 0, and then you added 7 or 8 folks who came in with more experiences. And so how do you connect those dots? And then we were still bringing on more people to the team in the middle of all of this. So the organization change management conversations and the departmental change management was so needed. And that, again, was not a part of at least my original configuration. Now, you might have had that in your back pocket the whole time based on those conversations. It seemed perfectly seamless in terms of how it was actually delivered and managed. But the way that we connected those different dots, you heard me say, I not want a hair on fire approach around this particular organization change. There had been a lot of transitions and changes that had already affected this particular team. And so we needed something that was going to be, in order to have the behavioral change that we were looking for, the learning process needed to be one where people were comfortable and they felt reassured and they had that open space to say, I don't know collective impact. I don't know what I'm doing as it relates to this. And in order to be that level of vulnerability with people after change, I think was one of the big surprises for me. In one of those organization change management conversations, there was something that was said around, in every change, there's an ending and a beginning. And I think the facilitator also said, have you been asked a probing question for self-reflection? And I was like, immediately, ouch, which was, have you been marking the endings? Whenever you're asking people to do something new, have you at least gone back and acknowledged all of the work that had gotten accomplished and the end of something? And so for me, I was like, ooh, that's really painful to think about if you've never taken the time and you're just bouncing from thing to thing. And you've never taken the time to put a pin in it or have that is ending. And now we're beginning something new and reflecting on that. In my AmeriCorps days, we always talked about a celebration, planning, action, planning, or I don't know, there's a whole phrase, but it ends with celebration. And I'm like, we forgot the celebration part. It may be an ending, but it doesn't have to be a bad ending. It can be a good ending.
Yeah, I think taking the time to, and even in one of the first sessions that we did as a live virtual training, taking the time to think about what has served you, what hasn't served you, how do we want to move forward, casting that vision, it really gives space for that. And so I appreciate that you're calling that out and that they had a chance to celebrate the ending of something and the beginning of something new. Now, again, behavior change is complex. I feel like I say that a lot. And so even a robust 7-month program will not magically result in completely changed behavior for everyone. But as you think about where the team started, where they are now, and where you're headed, what do you think the impact will be for your team and your organization long term?
So I've tried to also monitor. We do frequent pulse surveys through Lattice with our staff. We also take the temperature, so to speak, in org-wide employee surveys. And so in looking at the questions, and so again, with collective impact, it's all about data. And so we have seen I think a 5% jump in clarity on some key organizational elements between our October survey and our April survey. And it is vastly different than the prior year. So we hadn't quite yet rolled everything out. We might have had one e-learning that launched the prior fall. And so now we've had a whole year post implementation on some of the elements. And so data-wise, we are directionally headed exactly where we wanted to be in terms of those behavior changes. We're also seeing, on the qualitative data perspective, the relationships and the way that the pairings ended up happening and the alignments between people is that we were building bridges and tunnels between staff who previously were not really connected with each other on the same team. right? And so as a remote 100% company, that's really important. That is a great advancement of this that I don't know that we really expected as one of the key drivers of positive change. But that has then blossomed into all kinds of other things of like, oh, well, since we've worked together on this, I also thought of that we could work on. And I love that the ownership is at the individual contributor level and they're bubbling up different ideas on how to make these improvements. And another component, there's some great articles out there on failing forward. But as I said, there was this disparate understanding of collective impact. And so Angie Okudo on our team, I'm going to call her out because she is the model for me of being willing to fail forward. She will tell you, she just says the thing, right? I should be the first one to like raise her hand. I don't get this. I don't understand this. And she probably more than anybody else on our team is the one who's most familiar with collective impact, having lived and breathed it. And so the fact that she is modeling that vulnerability is just an absolute treasure. And it also impacted the others who were a part of this so that they will say the thing and they will ask the questions as well. Because when you're learning and growing and developing, isn't that really what you want? Is people that's how we learn. That's how we push through and take ourselves higher up that mountain.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to learn if you haven't admitted that you don't know. So maybe that's a whole podcast episode. The first step to learning is something that you don't know. That's so good. I'm so glad that you're starting to see the impact, and I'm sure that you'll continue to see this over time. And I know how much you care about your team and your team's development. So I'm sure you will continue to invest in them as well. We often in L&D, somebody will get a request and you have a one-off training and then that's the end of it. You never hear of it again. But I know that you care deeply about this work and about your people. And so I'm sure that you will continue to invest in them in different ways as they continue to grow and learn new things.
Absolutely. We're really excited. We're in the process of a strategic plan right now. And so the e-learning development that we have for our team is anxiously awaiting the outcome of that in a couple of weeks. And then we'll be in touch with Skill Masters to help us get to that next step of the mountain.
Well, I appreciate that for sure. It's been so fun as always, Rebecca. I love working with you. I love all of our conversations that we get to have. And it's so fun that we get to share this with the Learning for Good listeners as well. So thank you for jumping on with me today.
Thanks, Heather.
Rebecca is a fabulous executive leader who cares deeply about her team and the equity-focused work they do. I could not ask for a better partner, and the results speak for themselves. A team who had experienced an incredible amount of change, who might otherwise be hesitant to experience more change, now feels more ownership and more clarity about their work. And they're building relationships that are enablers for their success. That's what this type of work is all about. I was honored to be a part of it. I'll see you next time on Learning for Good.
Hey friend, was this episode helpful for you? Did you like what you heard? Do you want more content like this? Here are 3 things you can do. Hit subscribe. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your podcast app of choice. Share this episode with a colleague. This means so much to me personally. I read every review, but it also helps me learn what content you like most so I can create more of what you want. All right, turn that Teams or Slack chat back on when you're ready, and I'll see you next time on Learning for Good.